Hey guys, it's Chandler Kramer. I'm here with Lone Star Discs, and today I will be doing it in the bag. This is a highly requested video since last year, so I'm finally doing it. You're welcome, all the people that asked for this. Well, starting off, I've got the Discology Izzo bag. They are my apparel, or I say apparel, my bag sponsor for the year. This thing holds as many discs that I need. I currently have a total of 30 discs in my bag, so I'm gonna go through each of them. I can't wait to see all the comments about how many drivers I have, but we'll get there. I'm gonna start with what I'm gonna be putting with. So I'm gonna be putting with the Copperhead. I will be primarily putting with this one. This is a black one that they ran specifically for me. I asked them to run some black ones. So this is what I'll mainly be putting with. I don't think I'll be using the white one very often. In fact, I don't use it anymore. It's kind of in my bag because it's pretty. So Copperheads are what I'll be putting with this year. And yeah, they feel great in the hand. I originally had something to replace my Slammer, and these are probably a step up, I would say, from the Slammer, because they also redesigned the Slammer. It's too stable now. These are what the Slammer used to be. So this is what I'll be putting with. Moving on, I have a V2 black bull snake. Once again, black putter type thing. They don't really make black discs, which is why I love them the most, because they're hard to come by. But I use this probably way more than I should. I actually had a throw-in at USDGC with this disc on hole 10. It was during the last round, and I laid up, and I was like, I'm just gonna lay up, pitch for birdie, and I threw it in from about 250 feet. This thing is extremely beefy, and it handles any kind of torque you need, which is why I throw it probably the most, because it'll also stick whenever it hits the ground, so it won't really skip at all. So, bull snake. Moving on, I've got a V2 Armadillo. I'm gonna be real. I don't know why I still have this in my bag, because it's so beat in that it's actually not flat anymore. And it's so understable that I can throw this thing on about this angle and it will flip all the way over and still probably roll. No, I know why I use it, because usually when it hits the ground by the basket for approach shots, anywhere between like 100 feet, maybe 120 feet, when I don't feel like jump putting, I'll throw this and it'll just sit right by the basket. It very rarely will ever have a roll away. Yeah, that's the Armadillo. I can't wait to accidentally miss one of those. It's gonna be great. Moving on to mids, I only carry 4 putters. Moving on to the 3 mids that I have a Proto Ranger that I absolutely love. This is in the Alpha plastic. This thing for me, I kind of use it. I don't use it too often, but whenever I need a straight shot that's about 300 to 350, more than likely I'm gonna reach to this. If I were to throw this as far as I could or as hard as I could, more than likely I could probably reach 400, but I don't ever need that. I have other discs in my bag that can reach that distance for me. So this is gonna be a straight shot for me about 300 feet roughly. I usually won't throw this because there's not a lot of shots on tour that require just a straight shot 300 feet, but I have it in the bag because I need it. So that's the Ranger. Moving on to the next disc that Mr. Hasselhofstra gave to me behind the camera, the green midi. I've had this a long time ago. This was a Bravo green midi. It's one of the first older Bravo runs. And this was the first midi that I found that could handle torque resistance while also still being stable. So I stole it from Josh. Well, he gave it to me, but he asked for it back and I didn't get it back. So this is going in the bag. This is kind of in between the Walker and the Ranger that I have. So it'll push straight, but not losing any stability to it. Yeah, this is gonna be not used too often, I don't think, because I usually throw the Walker a lot, but this will be, if I need something to push a little bit straighter, this is what it's gonna be my go-to is. So this is the midi. Moving on to the most stable mid-range that I throw a lot. This is one of my most thrown discs in my bag, is the Walker. And I got a beautiful little sunset looking thing going on here, but this thing is beef. It's beat up, it's Bravo, so it's the more stable plastic. But I've had this in the bag ever since it came out. I remember I first got it and they sent like a stack of them, and I tried this one out and I was like, I threw it one time and I said that's going in the bag, and it's been there ever since. I think if I threw this in the water, I would swan dive in to retrieve it, because this thing is almost irreplaceable. But any kind of overstable shot that I need from about 250 feet, maybe closer if I'm feeling it, I'm going straight to this disc. This thing will barely skip. and it is reliably stable. So that's the walker. Headwind's picking up. I'm about to miss something. So moving on to the 23, yes, 23 drivers that I have between fairway and distance. We're gonna start from my left, and work my way right. So most of y'all probably know what this disc is. This is the Tumbleweed. This is my roller disc. I can't get this thing to fly if I tried. It is so understable, and at this point, it's incredibly beat up. It's Bravo, which is supposed to be the more stable plastic. Well, not with this mold, so. I think a lot of people know that this is what I threw. This is the type of disc I threw at European Open on hole 10 when I threw that roller. I retired that disc because I'm afraid to lose that disc. So I replaced it with this one, which I think is actually flippier than that one. So that's fun. Also, I try not to throw this very often when it's come in the woods because it's the same color as the leaves, and I can't tell you how many times I've almost lost this disc. But this is my go-to roller disc. It's a great roller disc. It's very friendly for user-friendly. It's a very great user-friendly disc. I'd highly recommend it to anybody, but for me, it's my roller disc. So that's the Tumbleweed. Moving on, we have something that is understable, but not quite as understable as that last one. It is the Curl. This is an old Alpha Curl, real good and stiff. This thing for me is actually a little bit more stable because I used to have one that was orange, almost like a burnt orange. And it used to be really flippy. Well, I lost that one, unfortunately, put this one in the bag, and this one's actually way more stable than the previous one. This thing for me, if I need to go to a distance shot where it's a little bit open and I can trust that it'll flip and get a full flight, this is the one I go to. This thing bombs, it goes extremely far. For me, I could probably say anywhere from 450 to 500 feet consistently if I give it the airspace to do so. So I will sometimes roll this disc, but not really because I have the Tumbleweed. But this right now is, for me, is kind of a utility disc and used for bomb drives, like really long bombers that are open. So that's the Curl. And I think I mentioned it, but once again, it's just the stiffer Alpha. So moving on, we have a disc that just recently got in my bag, the Guadalupe. It's an Alpha plastic. So originally, I gotta be honest, I didn't touch this disc for the longest time, but I needed some kind of slot that was similar to what I previously had when a Champion Valkyrie. And I gotta admit that this flies to a T exactly like that disc. Any kind of hole that pretty much is about 300 to 350 that I need to go to the left, or at least finish left, I can throw this on hyzer, it'll flip up flat and slowly fade left. Not turning over to a roller and dumping, but necessarily just kind of slowly going left, and eventually it'll flatten out and kind of land. This is a great disc. I also will occasionally backhand this disc. Yes, I do backhand. I know somebody's gonna comment that, but this is a great disc. It's actually more stable than some of the other ones I've thrown, which is why I bag it. I typically like to stay with everything that is stable in my bag, but that's the Guadalupe. It's the only one I got of it, and if I lose it, I'll probably be pretty sad for a while. But Alpha, Guadalupe. Moving on, I have 3 of the same discs that do pretty much the same thing. So I have the taco job that is the lariat that I put in the basket the other day. This is a Bravo lariat. I really don't know how to describe it other than it's pretty much exactly like my TL3. And it's also, at this point now, it's beat in like my old TL3. So I use this disc a lot for anywhere between 350 to 400 feet that needs to go either dead straight or maybe straight with like a little bit of a left finish. Because if I do pop this thing on hyzer, it'll flip up the flat, maybe drift a little bit left, but it really won't stay off that line. It kind of just likes to go straight and not really do too much else. If I decide to, sometimes I'll have to throw a shot that actually needs to go right, but I'll need to pop up a little bit, so I'll go to this shot where I can throw it on hyzer, it'll pop up the flat and kind of ride straight while also going right. So it's more like a pushing hyzer. But this disc is great. I've had this in my bag for quite a while, ever since it came out. This is the lariat, the Bravo lariat. This poor taco disc, I'm surprised I still have it in the bag, honestly, after what it did in the cage. Moving on, I have a Hooligan disc thread. Once again, it's gonna be similar to that one. The difference with this one is it's actually, even though that one got tacoed in the basket, this is actually more understable than that one. So it's gonna do almost the same thing, except if I need something to drift a little bit more left, but not as much as the Guadalupe, I'm probably gonna go to this one. It's the same thing where I can throw it on a hyzer flip, it'll flip up the flat, and this one will actually push harder left than the Lariat, but not as hard as the Guadalupe. So it's a nice in-between disc that I have. But this is the same thing. I'm probably gonna use this for 350 feet, maybe 400 feet if I need to. But yeah, hooligan disc thread. I believe that's also in the Bravo plastic, if I had to guess, that kind of plastic. So once again, we have another Bravo Lariat. This is a very recent addition to the bag. I think I put this one in the bag about a week ago. No, actually it was about 3 days ago. I correct myself on that. I was messing around and looking at some of the discs I had, and I saw this Artist Series one, and I knew I really love the Artist Series Lariat. It's super cool. It's got the cowboy, you know, with the rope and the Lariat. I really liked it, so I was like, let me just try it out. I threw it, and it's the most stable Lariat that I think I've ever thrown. I throw it on hyzer, it flips up to flat, barely, and then it will just fade right out. So I kept joking saying like, I don't even think this is a Lariat, but it's a Lariat. I don't really know. This is gonna be a very odd disc for me because I wanna use it for 350, 400 feet shots, but really this is gonna be closer to 300 to 350 shots that need to go straight with honestly maybe a slight finish to the right. So this is gonna be a straighter shot for me, but this is gonna have more of a consistent fade than the other two will because it's actually way more stable. But yeah, that's another Bravo Lariat. Moving on, we have the one-of-a-kind Kaka, the Mockingbird. I originally, because they retooled it recently, so this is the retooled version of the Mockingbird. I originally had a few of the old ones whenever they first came out, and I wouldn't touch those with a 10-foot pole because they were extremely understable. They were so understable that I actually have a reel on my Instagram, go follow me if you want to. I would throw this thing on this kind of angle, it would flip all the way over and continue to flip and eventually hit the angle on a roller angle. So, but they retooled it, it's much more stable. This disc is insane as far as how much glide it has. I think it's a 6 glide and it's very true to the numbers. I throw this anytime I need to power down on something, but I still need the glide, I would throw this disc in a heartbeat. It's very dead straight. I just got done playing straddle yesterday, and on the second to last hole in the woods, I threw it on a line directly at the basket and it did not break that line. So this disc is insane. I'm gonna use this probably quite a bit on tour this year for straight shots. They're gonna be anywhere from 300 to like 400. This disc has a ton of distance on it and you don't even have to throw it that hard. So this is the Mockingbird, and mine is in Bravo plastic in case I forgot to mention that. Moving on to one of my most used discs last year is a bar stamped pink Alpha Dos Equis. And this thing was one of my main throwers at the European Open. Josh actually gave this to me at Texas States, and I used it all season last year. It's seasoned as can be, and the beautiful thing about it is even though it's as seasoned as can be, it is still stable where I can throw this thing as hard as I need to, as hard as I want to, dead flat. It'll go straight, but it will never turn over. It will just pretty much go a little bit to the right at the end after going about 375 feet. I love this thing. I use this all the time. This is almost a utility disc. I can't say how much enough I trust this disc. I love this disc so much. Thanks, Josh, and you're never getting this back. So, Alpha Dos Equis. Moving on. Starry Night Madcap. This was a very special run of this disc. I originally had this disc. I forgot I had this disc, and I was going through my collection and stuff like that, and I was looking to see, you know, what can I use to fill my bag, because as I was building my bag this year, because I'm full Lone Star this year. So I took out my Thunderbird and replaced it with this disc. But when I was originally looking at it, I didn't think I was going to put this in the bag because it was underneath a bunch of other discs, so it was actually tacoed almost completely. So I put it out in the sun, it flattened it back out, I threw it, and it is incredibly stable, and it is exactly what I'm looking for in that Thunderbird slot. Because I used to love throwing the Thunderbird. The problem with mine was they were never stable enough. This actually is the stability I've been looking for a very long time in that Thunderbird slot, so I'm glad to have that slot back in my bag. This thing is great. This will be up for grabs as far as how much I'll use this because it has a ton of glide, just like some of the other fairways that we have. but this has the stability that I'm looking for, so this is not going to leave my bag anytime soon. I love this disc. The stamp is actually sick. I love it. Overall, great disc. I'm glad to have this slot back in my bag. So, Starry Night Mad Cat. I believe if this isn't a plastic, I think it's alpha. I think it's kind of stiffer, yeah. So, now we get to the distance drivers. Well, this ain't distance driver. If I can get this thing to go 300 feet, it's a great day. This is a first run tombstone with the sugar skull stamp. Is that what it is, right? Okay. So the sugar skull, I can't do English sometimes. The sugar skull stamp, words, alphabet, English. I know what I'm talking about. This thing is a first run tombstone, bored flat, and Josh gave this to me when I came up here one day testing some of the new molds, and I said, hey, I love my tombstone. Maybe we can find something a little more stable. And he goes, I think I might have something for you. So he let me try this out, and I can't actually believe that I'm saying this, but I finally have a tilt replacement that is not a tilt. This thing is ridiculous. It is as stable as it comes. I don't think it is physically possible for anybody to overturn this disc. I think if if you try to get Garrett or AB to throw this, there's no way they can turn this over. I promise you, there's no way that this happens. And I'm willing to put money on that too. This is Bravo, so it's real flimsy. Oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm gonna use this for. This is a straight utility disc for me. There's no way around it. It's a straight utility disc. This is the most stable disc I have in my bag, and I guarantee you that I remember every mold that we have, it's the most stable disc in that warehouse. So, love this disc. I better not lose it because I would be in trouble if I did. But Bravo, first run tombstone. Let's see, moving on to a not so stable tombstone, we have a pink alpha puddle top tombstone. I originally got a couple of them to try out. This was one that was puddle top, so I said, that looks interesting. So I tried it out. It flies exactly like my Star Max. I can push it as hard as I want flat. It's gonna go for a little while, but it will always fade. I threw this quite a bit at the straddle yesterday, the day before. Super good disc. Pretty much anything between 250 to 300. I don't throw the Chupacabra. Instead, I like throwing the tombstones. So that's why I have 2 or 3 of these in the bag. That 250 to 300 foot range, it's more than likely I'm gonna be throwing something either this or that previous one. Probably this one because it's less stable and I can actually push it straight a little bit before it fades. So that's the tombstone. Moving on to my variety of warbirds that I have 5 of them. And yes, they are all different in stability. I can't wait to read the comments on this. So I've got a white tour series of mine, which by the way, buy them. They're available still, I think. This isn't my most stable one, but it's stable enough that it'll do the job. Anytime there's a headwind, I'm probably gonna either go to this one or the next one I'm gonna show you. I threw this one quite a bit yesterday. It holds up very well. It's incredibly stable. The wing on this one's a little bit flatter, which is why it's more stable. I can't really express enough how quickly this disc has become my favorite, because originally I had a couple that I lost that were actually really, really stable of this run. Couldn't find them until I went to the factory the other day and someone picked this one out for me and said, try this one, and it's been in my bag ever since. I love this disc. These are more than likely gonna be my distance shots, so anything, you can pick a distance, like as far as I can throw, that's probably what I'm gonna go for. It's what I'm gonna be reaching for when I throw these. This one's not the most stable, it's the second most stable, and I love this thing, yeah. Now, here's the most beefy thing I've ever thrown in my life, pretty much, when it comes to this mold, is a alpha purple stock stamp warbird. I don't understand how it's so stable, but I don't care, it's great. This is what I've been missing in my bag for the longest time. I originally had, these were the ones I had originally this past year, and there was a couple tournaments where I found myself thinking, like, I wish I had something a little bit more stable. And then along came this. I picked this one up from the warehouse not too long ago, threw it once, and knew that it was never leaving my bag unless I lost it. So, most insane thing ever. I'm probably gonna be using this one if there's a stiff headwind, like when we play Waco probably in like 2 months, this one. This is the most stable thing I have in my bag besides the tilt, I believe. So, that's the purple warbird. By the way, I know it's probably gonna be said, but all my warbirds are alpha except for one, and that's a very special case, which I'll get to. So this will be the third most stable disc I have as far as warbirds go. It's one of my bombers. I throw this a lot. It's another Tour Series disc that I have. It's more stable than the last two I have, but it's also less stable. I throw this one probably the most out of all mine. This is a good distance one, but if there's a slight headwind, I know I can trust it to where it'll get a bit of a flex, but it will come back. So not really much to say about it other than it's my main thrower. So this is the most understable of the 4 alpha ones that I have, and this is a bomber. I usually will like to throw this in a tailwind. If there's a headwind, I probably won't be reaching for this too much unless it's very, very, very slight. If there's a crosswind from right to left and I have a long distance hole, this is probably what I'm going to pull out because it will hold in that crosswind from right to left and get me max distance. I have thrown this thing anywhere between 450 to 500. I think one time I did a 360 with it and I think I reached anywhere from like 500 to 550, somewhere in that range. This disc is great, but I don't use it a ton. So another Tour Series, alpha, light blue. But if you ever see me throwing the baby blue, it's usually gonna be in a tailwind. So last but not least for the warbirds, we have a yellow Bravo stock run, stock stamp, whatever you want to call it, warbird. I originally didn't want to throw any Bravo warbirds because they felt a little bit gummier in the hands, but this was a special case. I got this one, I threw it, and I was like, wow, it's incredibly stable. And then I hit a tree at Northwoods Black, and it pretty much changed the game. This thing now, when I throw it, it is my most understable warbird. I can throw this thing as hard as I want. It will push flat for like 350 to 400 and then fade. This is a very good straight disc, but it's not straight in the sense that it's understable. It's straight in the sense that it's reliably overstable, but it will just push straight for the longest time. So along with the light blue one, I usually throw this in a tailwind because it's a bit of a bomber for me, but I won't throw this very often. It's kind of a special case. I really only throw this when I need a pushing hyzer. So yellow, stock stamp, Bravo warbird. That was close, I almost missed. Now we come to a special disc. This is a Bravo Proto Seguin. And when I tell you this thing is stable, it is incredibly stable. You should not be able to turn this over. I think there are going to be very few people that I know in the world that could throw this disc and turn it over. I think this is going to be an ape replacement for me. It doesn't quite have the glide of the Boss, but it has the stability of my ape, which is a major slot that I had in my bag. This thing is insane. I've thrown it a lot. It's probably going to be about a 350 foot shot because I really can't. I can throw this thing on an Annie and maybe get to 400 if I'm lucky, but I really don't like that. I really just like this for 350. Anywhere between that like 350 to 400 range is very comfortable for me because it'll push enough to get there, but not enough to go past. So love this thing. I'll probably be throwing it a lot, but man, this thing is stable. I can't stress enough. Like y'all will see whenever I throw, this thing is insane. Moving on to a Bravo bayonet, and if I had to describe a Boss or a Boss replacement, you're looking at it. This is a Bravo bayonet. I can throw this thing on a flex, it'll go. It is the furthest flying disc probably in my bag if I were to give it the air to actually get a full flex out. This thing is insane. They originally, it was a little bit flippier and then they fixed it, they retooled it a little bit, and now it is actually almost an exact replica of my main thrower last year, which was a Boss. There's not much to say other than this thing just goes. The number, I think it's like a 5 glide. It really is pretty accurate to that. I would be a little more cautious on the -2 too. I think since they retooled it, it's a little bit different than that. It's probably a little bit more stable. At higher arm speeds, it probably will behave like the -2 too though. So just a fair warning for anybody looking for this and thinking, oh, it's probably like a Shrike. Not quite. It's at higher speeds, yes. At lower speeds, I would say it's a lot more stable. But this is going to be a bomber disc for me all year. I'm looking forward to throwing this. Moving on, we are coming to the last of what I got of all my drivers, and I have a series of buoys that all range in stability. So I have a glow buoy that is 168, and the reason I put emphasis on this is because I do not throw discs, and I do not like to throw discs that are below 170. I'm a little bit even hesitant on throwing a disc that's 170. I usually like to throw max weight around 175, 174, somewhere around there. Travis came up to me the other day when we were at the factory. This disc has been in my bag for a week. Let me clarify this. we were testing out some discs. Travis came up to me and said, hey, I've got this disc, it's incredibly beefy for me, let me see what you do with it. I threw it one time and knew that I was gonna keep it. And then I threw it again and knew it was going in my bag, and I don't think I need to take it out. So it's gonna stay in there. The only thing I can really say about this disc is all of these are stable. The buoys are very stable, but this is the most stable. So if there is a crazy stiff headwind, like if we're at DDO again this year, which I don't think it'll be that windy this year, but if we're at DDO this year and it's incredibly windy, I will be leaning on this disc a ton. I don't think it'll flip. It might even get a full flex, but it will not turn over and dump on me. It's a great disc and it is incredibly stable. So Glow buoy, 168 gram, one of a kind. Moving on, we got the Halo buoy. And the reason I say the Halo buoy because of the outer rim here. This was one of my most thrown discs last year at DDO. Mainly DDO because of the wind, but honestly at every course I played, I threw this a lot. Reliably stable, even though it's beat in, it's still very stable. And this is actually, even though it's stiff, it's actually stiffer Bravo. This is actually Bravo plastic, which is very funny because it feels, if you were to hold this, it feels exactly like Alpha, but incredibly stable. I threw it a lot last year. I don't see why I wouldn't do it the same this year. So love this disc and it'll be in my bag for the longest time. Hopefully I don't lose it. So, oh yeah. I don't really know what to say about this other than it's the first run Glow buoy, and they made about 40 of these, you think? Probably? Yeah. They made about 40 of these. Luckily I have extras, I have backups, I come prepared. But yeah, I don't know how to say it other than it's just ridiculous. It's beefy. It's usually, if I'm gonna throw this disc, it's for like 350 feet. I have thrown this thing against brick walls, trees, cement, everything, and it's still just stable. There's nothing else to say about it other than it's just beefy. There's only a few of these out there, so if you end up finding one of these, call me. I'll gladly take it. But yeah, incredibly stable. It is slightly at this point, well, it has its days where it's stable, but it's slightly less stable than the one I just showed you. So, but I'll be throwing this one quite a bit. It's still chipped for how much I threw it last year. I expect the same, I'll throw the same thing. I'll throw it the same amount as I did last year, so. Looking forward to this one because this one's got a little bit of a story to it. I have a red, I believe this might be Bravo. I'm not actually, I think it's Bravo because I can flex it a little bit. So here's a little bit of a story to this one. We're playing our practice round. Nico had just came up for the day, and we're playing here at the Lone Star facility, playing the 9-hole course. And this was out in the middle of the yard, like dirt everywhere. This thing looked horrible. And Nico picks it up, kind of looks at it for a second, and he says, he goes, do you throw these? And I was like, yeah, I throw buoys. He goes, I think you might like this one. So he gives it to me, and the first throw with it, it was incredibly stable. And this disc was in the middle of the yard. I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. So I grabbed the disc, I threw it again, threw it again, threw it again, and I was like, okay, it's consistently stable. But it wasn't as beefy as some of the other ones. It was kind of like a pushing, like it was flat. I could throw this as hard as I want, it's gonna go straight, and I was like, I've never seen a buoy do that. So I had to bag it. So thanks, Nico, appreciate that. Yeah, I'm gonna be real, if it wasn't for Nico, I probably wouldn't have this disc in my bag. So really appreciate that. I don't know how much I'm gonna use this on tour. I just know that I'm probably gonna need this eventually, so that's why it's in my bag. Yeah, Bravo, double stamps, knife, buoy. Yeah, love this thing. Last but certainly not least, it's another buoy. It is a Bravo buoy. Yep, Bravo buoy. I gave this one to Rob whenever I was trying to convince him to test out the buoy. And I told him, I was like, dude, it's so stable, try it out. Like buoy mold's super stable. So we're in the middle of Vermont, and he was like, hey, I think the buoy you gave me is broken. And I was like, what do you mean? He threw it, and this was in a tailwind, and this thing flipped over so quick. And I looked at him and said, well, I'll take it back. So I took it back, originally put it on my shelf, didn't want to throw it, didn't need it. And then one day I said, well, let me try it. So I took it out. Then I accidentally sliced a piece of it out slightly. So there's a small chunk taken out, and it flies exactly like my old Flippy Boss. I used to have a Boss that I could throw on hyzer, flip up the flat, and it would go left and get a full flat. It would get a full flight S out of it by just flipping it up. It's a very special case disc, and I feel like there's only maybe a couple holes on tour that I might actually ever use this disc. But we'll see. I just know I have to have it in my bag. It's a good shot shape that I'm missing that I am filling with this disc. So once again, orange, and it's the stiffer Bravo plastic. So that is actually all of the discs I have in my bag. The only other things I can think that are in my bag, I carry my my drive bag with me in this pocket. For the moment, I might decide to mix it somewhere. I have my towel. Gig 'em. Shout out to my alma mater and the Brazos Valley Club, A&M. I feel bad because a lot of people are probably thinking like, we saw your towel from last year. Yeah, it had to get thrown away because of how bad it got ripped up. So I got one for Christmas. I'm glad I did because this is kind of what I love to have, is the towel symbolizing A&M. So I believe that's it. I know I've got some tape in here. Shout out to my cloth tape for keeping my fingers unblistered throughout the season. I go through a lot of these. I'm not actually sure how much I go through these, but I know that I ended up going to the store quite a bit and buying multiple packs, multiple rolls. So I'll be doing the same thing this year. The tape is great. I'm adjusted to it at this point. So if you ever do get blisters on your fingers from forehanding or backhanding, I would actually recommend, I'd actually recommend cloth tape. It's, you almost can't feel it after a while. You get adjusted very quickly. And I believe that is it because there's nothing else in the bag other than the bag itself. But that's the end of the bag. I hope you enjoyed. I can't believe I just made that. I'm not gonna lie.